3 days, 2 deaths, 1 sport shattered. 1994, the San Marino Grand Prix, a weekend that began like any other and ended like no other in Formula One history.
Now, and Senna! My goodness! I just saw him plunge off to the right, and Senna has joined Pedro Lamy.
Friday, April 29th, 1994, Imola, Italy. It began like any other Grand Prix. The sound of engines, the scent of fuel, but underneath it all, an unease. No incident, no warning, just a quiet feeling that something was about to go very wrong. Over the next 3 days, Formula One lost its sense of control, its sense of invincibility, and 2 of its own. The 1994 San Marino Grand Prix didn't just change the rules, it forced Formula One to rebuild from the ground up. The cost was unimaginable. Friday afternoon, the first practice of the weekend. Rubens Barrichello, 21 years old, his second F1 season, was pushing through Variante Bassa, a fast-sweeping left-right near the pit entrance. He clipped the curb at over 140 miles per hour. The car went airborne, hit the top of the tyre barrier, flipped upside down, and skidded to a stop. The impact measured 95 G, 95 times the force of gravity. Barrichello was unconscious before the car came to rest. His tongue blocked his airway, and for a few seconds, he wasn't breathing. Sid Watkins, Formula One's legendary chief medical officer, reached the car first. He pulled Barrichello's tongue forward, cleared the airway, and stabilized him in the cockpit. Rubens survived. No concussion, a broken nose, and a sprained wrist. But the crash was a warning. To most in the paddock, it didn't feel like a fluke. It felt like a sign. Something was coming.
The whole weekend itself is a little bit vague in my mind. It's something that I think I'm lucky.
Saturday morning, April 30th, 1994. Final qualifying session. Roland Ratzenberger, a 33-year-old rookie, finally living his F1 dream in only his 3rd Grand Prix with the underdog Simtech team, was on a flyer. He just missed the cut on Friday and needed a clean lap to make the grid. But on the lap before, he ran wide at Acqua Minerale. The front wing scraped the curb, hard enough to cause damage, but he stayed out. Coming through Villeneuve, flat out nearly 200 miles per hour, the wing failed. The car went straight, no control, no response, and it slammed into the wall. The impact, 500 G, 500 times the force of gravity. The front end shattered, and in the cockpit, Roland Ratzenberger was already gone. The cause? A basilar skull fracture, a break at the base of the skull, instant and irreversible. It was the first fatal crash during a Grand Prix weekend since Riccardo Paletti in 1982, 12 years. And for a generation of drivers, the first time they'd lost one of their own trackside. That night, Ayrton Senna, 3-time world champion, global icon, and the soul of Formula One, placed an Austrian flag inside his cockpit. If he won the next day, he planned to raise it for Roland. He never got the chance. Sunday morning, May 1st, Imola, Italy. The paddock was quiet. When Senna got in the car, he carried a small Austrian flag, still folded. The race began normally. Senna started on pole, but behind him, chaos. JJ Leto stalled on the grid. Pedro Lamy, unsighted, hit him from behind at full speed. Debris flew into the grandstands. 8 spectators were injured. The safety car was deployed and the race resumed at the start of lap 6. 1 lap later, it happened. Senna exited the high-speed kink at the Tamburello at 131 miles per hour. The Williams didn't turn, it went straight, across the grass, into the wall. The impact was violent, but the car didn't explode. From a distance, it looked survivable, but up close, it wasn't. The right front suspension rod snapped backward, piercing through the cockpit and through the helmet. Medical teams arrived immediately. Sid Watkins performed an emergency tracheotomy on the track. Senna was airlifted to Bologna's Maggiore Hospital. For hours there was no official word. Broadcasters speculated. The race continued, but Senna was gone on impact. At 6:40 p.m, the hospital made it official. But on the day of the crash, the race didn't stop. There was no red flag, no official pause. The marshals cleaned the area and Formula One kept going. What followed was more damage. Michele Alboreto, driving for Minardi, came into the pits. Routine stop until it wasn't. As he left the pit box, one of his rear wheels detached. It bounced violently through the lane and hit several mechanics, 2 from Ferrari, 2 from Lotus, all injured. Again, no red flag. The race carried on. But in the end, Michael Schumacher won. But there was no celebration, no joy. On the podium, drivers stood in silence. Schumacher couldn't raise the trophy.
And I'd like to take this championship and give it to him.
Formula One had spent years modernising, but that weekend exposed just how much was still missing. Senna's death wasn't just a tragedy, it became a legal case. Under Italian law, any fatality during a sporting event triggers an investigation. The Williams team came under scrutiny, including technical director Patrick Head and designer Adrian Newey. The case dragged on for nearly 11 years. Eventually, Newey was acquitted and Head was cleared under the same statute of limitations. But the implications stuck. Formula One had run out of excuses. The era of silence, of brushing danger aside, was over. Max Mosley, the FIA president, made a controversial choice. He attended Ratzenberger's funeral in Austria instead of Senna's in Brazil. As he later explained, "I went to Roland's funeral rather than to Senna's because I felt somebody needed to support him and his family." It stirred debate, but it also made a point. 2 drivers died that weekend, and both had been let down. In the days after Imola, the question stopped being rhetorical. Why was Tamburello still a flat-out kink with no runoff? Why did the pit lane stay open after debris injured mechanics? Why didn't the race stop after the crash, after the loose wheel? No one had a good answer. So, Formula One started changing, quickly.
In principle, I think it's acknowledged that he simply went too fast. What became a problem was that he went over the curb, which launched the car into the air, and instead of striking the tyres, which it should have done, it hit more or less the fence, glanced the tyres and hit the fence. A very severe impact.
The FIA moved fast to address the most visible problems. Electronic driver aids, like traction control and active suspension, had already been banned for 1994, but after Imola, the FIA doubled down. Cars were running lower, speeds were rising, and Imola made it clear the risks were outpacing the rules. So, more changes followed. Ride height was raised, diffusers were scaled back, pit lane speed limits were enforced for the first time. Track inspections became stricter, and for the first time in years, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, the GPDA, was revived. It had gone dormant in the 1980s. Now, it returned with purpose. Michael Schumacher, Gerhard Berger and Niki Lauda helped lead the charge. Drivers, not just teams and officials, wanted a seat at the table. By 1995, Tamburello was gone, at least in its original form. The high-speed corner that had claimed Senna was reprofiled into a chicane, slower, safer, a symbol of what the sport was willing to let go. More changes followed. Long-term safety overhauls. Tethers were added to suspension parts to stop wheels from flying off in crashes. Cockpit sides were raised to better protect a driver's head and shoulders. The HANS device, a head and neck restraint, became mandatory. Car structures were redesigned to absorb more impact and shield the driver. Medical and marshalling protocols were overhauled with better training, faster communication, and quicker access. Piece by piece, Formula One rebuilt its safety standards, not just to fix what happened, but to make sure it couldn't happen again. For 2 full decades, no Formula One driver lost their life during a race weekend. The silence that followed Imola wasn't just mourning, it was action. Modern Formula One cars are built around a carbon fiber monocoque, survival machines designed to protect, not just perform. They're fitted with padded headrests, 6-point harnesses, and since 2018, the halo. Some of it existed in 1994, but not like this. And every evolution traces back to that weekend. The 20-year streak ended in 2014 at Suzuka. In wet conditions under double yellow flags, Jules Bianchi slid off track. He hit a recovery vehicle at speed, suffered severe head injuries, and died 9 months later. He was the first driver in 20 years to die during a race weekend. It was a tragedy, but thanks to modern safety and medical response, he survived longer than earlier eras might have allowed. And his crash led to even more reform. F1 didn't stop evolving. On November 29, 2020, Romain Grosjean hit a barrier at over 200 km per hour. The car split in two, fuel ignited instantly, but Grosjean survived. He climbed out, on fire, with burns, but alive. He later credited the halo, the survival cell, and the medical crew. It wasn't luck, it was the result of what the sport learned in 1994. Senna's legacy wasn't just speed or charisma or championship fights, it was change. He became a cultural icon in Brazil.
Football matches across Brazil were stopped for a minute's silence yesterday as the crowds chanted Senna's name.
His image appeared on murals, postage stamps and street names. In 2024, Sebastian Vettel brought one of Senna's old McLarens back to Imola. He drove it around the circuit. And when the lap ended, he raised an Austrian flag. The tribute Senna never got to give was finally delivered 30 years later. He never saw the tethers, the halo, or what came next. But every driver on the grid today races because of what changed after Imola. 3 days, 2 lives, 1 broken soul of a sport. And from that, Formula One rebuilt itself, because the day F1 almost died was the day it chose to live.